just bigger facilities to be able to serve everyone that comes here. Obviously, we do good food anyway, but we're hoping to get it a little bit better. Nice outdoors. We've got nice verandas going outside here. The car park's here behind us. So as you come in, it's just one big massive building that's going to feed the whole complex.
I can imagine it's going to look pretty nice, and having own pristine facilities is always a nice attraction.
Obviously we're looking forward to it. We've had a few years here with the facilities we've got, but I just think we've outgrown them now. Time for a new investment.
As well as the hundreds of fish added to the lakes, there's also a fair number of originals, such as this 37 that's clearly been here for a good few years. With carp up to £60 plus throughout the complex, you never quite know what you might get next.
But once you've got your swim, that's when the games start. It's worth getting a bit of an action plan together if you can, rather than just going in all guns blazing. First of all, you've had a long journey, you're probably pretty tired. I'd recommend just flicking out a few rods whilst you get everything set up. Even if it's a couple of bags and a choddy. Obviously, if there's any signs to go for, flick them to them. If not, just look for obvious areas, flick them out, slacken off your lines, and get your bivvy set up for the week. If it doesn't look like there's much happening out there, then it's worth getting to know your swim with a marker rod. Obviously, if you speak to the bailiffs, they'll be able to put you onto the hot spots of the swim, which are worth not ignoring, but at the same time, it's always worth finding your own little spots as well if you can. If you've got your own different spot that hasn't been fished, then it's a bit of an edge, and B, it's that little bit more satisfying. Right, first of all, obvious spots. Without putting the marker out, look across your swim. You might have some overhanging bushes on the far bank like I've got here. There's gaps in between the overhang, so the bush protrudes quite a bit, and then you've got a gap in the middle, so that's an obvious spot. Another one is points of land. Straight across here, there's a big reed bed that sticks right out, that comes out like that, and then the rest of the bank comes around. So you've got a natural point in the land there. So if there's any fish swimming around sort of close to the bank, they're going to have to come around that point. So that's always worth putting a bait on those sort of spots. Over to the right there's some big reeds with a set of lily pads there. Again, it's calling out for a bait. Round to your left and right, the old matchmen call it inside line. Never ignore the margins. It's somewhere you can always trickle a bit of bait into without having to get the old stick out or spod or anything like that. So 3 or 4 times a day, 20 baits on a little spot down to your right and a little spot down to your left. You can prime them throughout the week, fishing whenever you like, or say it's absolutely tipping it down and you can't get a PVA bag out to your spot, or you don't want to stand there and run your boat out and get absolutely drenched. You've always got another option. You can just flick a rod down to there and you've got a nice little pre-baited spot. There's a little bit of bubbling coming up to the left here on one of the areas I've been flicking a bit of bait into now, so haven't tried them yet. I'm going to leave them alone for now because I'm pretty confident with them back spots. Right, now when it comes to actually finding your spots with a marker float, what a lot of people tend to do as a natural reaction is to cast it out, find a nice clean bit of gravel, get that boom, 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 and that's it, they'll fish on that. Now, you'll get perfect presentation on the gravel, but it just makes it so much easier for the fish to actually deal with it. I mean, if you look at this gravel here, imagine a rig on that, the fish can probably see it for starters. Secondly, they're grazing around carefully, they can do what they like, and chances are if they feel that rig a little bit, they're just going to spit it out. Whereas if you're fishing in a few inches of silt, you've got a bit of sediment there, the fish really have to root around to get to it. They can't see it, it's in amongst this stuff, so they're using their sensors and they tend to nail themselves a lot better like that. So always fish the siltier spots rather than the gravel spots. Any particular sort of bars or plateaus, anything like that, I generally fish off them. Generally if it is very hot and you've got very high pressure, the fish are going to be up in the water, so you might actually want to be on top of them plateaus or bars in the shallow areas. But as I say, for general rule, I like to fish just on the bottom of them.
Joe's good start continued, and it wasn't long before he was into another fish. Being in France for a week really gives you the chance to focus yourself on your fishing, to develop and work your swim to your advantage. Because it is a holiday venue, not your local syndicate or day ticket water, you need to use everything in your armoury to try and make it work for you.
I've been using a bait boat a little bit these last few days, mainly on one sort of area. They are a fantastic tool and a great edge in the right sort of situations. Now over here, especially on this lake, there's a lot of fishing that sort of requires fishing to the back margin. Now if you're casting over, you're making all that disturbance to start with, but also, you might end up in the trees, and then if you snap off, you've got all that line coming across. So, I can see why at Cretelakes they let people use them. So if you have got one, it is worth bringing, but one thing I will say is don't rely on it. If you're fishing all your rods on spots that you can't cast to, and then, that packs up or your battery runs out and you haven't got it charged up, then you're going to be absolutely knackered. So always try and have a few spots that you can cast to. You've always got plenty of water, so there's always little spots that you can trickle a bit of bait into and just leave alone. And that's exactly what I've done here. The last 3 days, I've been putting bait on the left-hand side of that bush out there when I've been walking around and baiting up my other spots. And I've left it alone completely. So I'm pretty confident, to tell you the truth. And we'll get it out there. Got a little PVA bag, threaded down the hook link, little boilie on there. I'll show you me rigging that in a bit anyway. And just a couple of handfuls of boilies and then a bit of crumb, just crumbled up a few in there. Obviously them little particles just fall through the water. And if there are any fish milling around in and them, out them bushes, them little particles hopefully just gonna grab their attention. So let's get it out there. I don't actually normally use bait boats very often. I've always got one, always had one, but I'll only use them where I really feel necessary, if I feel necessary. I don't like relying on them, but when you come out here, they can be a massive edge. That particular spot there, I've had majority of my fish from the middle rod. It's probably only about 3.5 foot fishing close to a bush. Now that bush has got quite a big overhang on it, so I should imagine it's quite a good little holding area. But it's not going to be a good holding area if you're crashing 3-ounce leads across there. Now, to fish as accurately as you want to, you could be the best caster in the world, but you're not going to do it without 2 or 3 attempts, I'm sure. That lead hitting the water, that impact, the noise, it definitely spooks fish. So if you can just drop it in there with a bait boat, drops the lead down gently, you don't get any of that. And it definitely seems to make the difference. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, on 2 occasions, I was driving the boat back a few minutes, literally, after putting the bait out. I've had a bite, and that's over a couple of handfuls of boilies as well. I've only been using it on the one rod, but I'm using it on this one now, as I say, because I'm putting it on this different spot. Right, I'm approaching the area now, so I'm just going to slow it up a little bit. I want to be a couple of foot off that bush, just on the left-hand side of it. I'd say roughly a little bit further. That's the other thing I will say. When you're fishing across far banks like this, that's the one. Just going to drop it there. Lovely. When you're fishing across to the far bank and you want to get it really tight, it's very deceiving from standing here looking across there. So for the first time, go round there, well, obviously go round there anyway, but send your mate round there when you're putting the boat out. Tell him where you want it, and you'll be 100% sure that you're on the right spot by obviously marking up your line. Whereas if you just do it yourself, you're not going to be 100% sure. And for that little bit of effort at the beginning of the week, it can make all the difference.
How about this then? 47 pounds of beautiful Cretelakes mirror carp. The fish were coming out all over the complex, and the spots that had been baited were starting to pay off. In any lake where there's a high concentration of big carp, bait is so important, and it's something that needs to be very near the top of an angler's list of priorities.
In France these days, a lot of venues you can only fish boilies, and the reason for that is that you get a lot of people fishing these lakes all year round, so there's a hell of a lot of bait going in, so whatever's going in for the fish needs to be good for them. What a lot of venues found is that too much pellet and everything caused a lot of ammonia in the water, and as a result, bad water quality, and didn't do the health of the fish any good. Boilies these days have been designed, to be really good for the fish. They pass through them quickly, they take all the goodness out of them, and they're up for eating more. So as a result, they're very healthy and very plump. One thing I will say is that if you've got a bait you're happy with, stick with that. On these lakes out here, they've got sell and activate in stock, so you can buy it if you need it. Obviously the sell, there's not a lot I can say about that. That hasn't already been said already. It catches fish everywhere, and these lakes where it tends to go in all the time, it only gets better and better, so it's a brilliant starter. I like to sort of bring a selection of sizes if you can, you know, smaller ones and bigger ones, mix them up a little bit. Obviously where you have only got a boilie only rule, you're slightly limited as to the sort of presentations you can offer, but there's still various bits and bobs you can do. First of all, one of the best scenarios I think that you can get with using boilies only is to spread them around your area. Not like the whole swim, you know, but specific areas, scatter them about. You know, what you're trying to create is a group of fish coming in, grazing that area, swimming around, picking up one bait there, swimming around, picking up another bait there. And as a result, when they're doing that movement, if they pick up your hook, they're moving, they move off and they nail themselves, you know. So get them grazing in an area, and if you can do that, it's a fantastic way of sort of getting a big hit if you can, using boilies only. Second up, obviously, you know, you can crush your boilies up. It'll take you quite a while to do them in a quarter crusher, but what you can do is sort of put them in a real tough plastic bag, get the guys to drive over them a couple of times, that'll crush them up into lots of bits and pieces, spod them out. Now what you've got there is loads of little bits and pieces, and it sort of creates a completely different feeding situation to the boilies. So the boilies are just going around picking them up like that. If you've got lots of crumb out there, they're rooting about. It's a good way of making them a little bit clumsier, because they're just rooting in all amongst them little bits, and if you've got a little balanced bait in amongst that, then, well, it's an absolute winner, to be honest with you. Obviously the other obvious one is a single hook bait. Now it's a tactic that, you know, is absolutely deadly in the right situation. These fish come across single boilies all the time, so if they come across one little boilie on its own, chances are they're not going to see any danger from it and they're going to munch it up. One thing I like to do as a matter of course is attach a little PVA bag onto my hook link, and I thread that down the hook link. It's a little confidence thing that I've done for years, and I've struggled not to do it, you know. It makes sure that the hook is in amongst that little pile of bait. It also makes sure it's not going to tangle, and also you've got that nice little feeding signal around your bait there, a bit of crumb. You've got a bit of visual attraction as well as that scent in amongst that too. So I find it hard to cast out without one, to be honest with you. You can just use crumb. Boilie crumb is absolutely fantastic as it is, but like everything, I like to have a little play around and tweak things a bit and add my own little bits and bobs. So to the boilie crumb, add a bit of this stick mix. You're allowed to use these stick mixes out here, so I put a bit of that in there. It's got lots of crushed hemp and stuff in there, lovely jubbly. Maldon sea salt, again, you know, something that I just like to add to all my bag mixes. Handful of that in there, proper salt. Little drop of oil, this is a hemp seed oil. Oil obviously floats up, so you've got little droplets coming up. If there's any fish swimming around across the area, hopefully that's going to come up, grab their attention, pull them down onto the bait. And one last liquid, I do like my liquids, is a bit of the old metamino. It's very, very strong. It's like a sort of liver, a bit of liver and aminos and stuff in there. As you can tell, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but it works. So mix all that up, give that a good old mix. God, I can really smell that, the livery stuff. If you did want to add a little bit of moisture, you can, but I think there's it's just about the right sort of consistency for me. Now wherever I go, I've always got a right selection of hook baits. Probably I go a little bit over the top, to be honest with you. This isn't even all of them, but I like to have a few options to play around with, different presentations and obviously different scents and certainly visual, colour-wise as well, you know. So standard bottom baits, I use them loads. These ones are the cell, they've gone a little bit sticky. Don't let that put you off, you know. If they get a little bit of white on them, it's only the sugars coming out. If anything, it makes them better. Certainly doesn't hurt anyway, and obviously you're out here for a week, so chances are your boilies are going to go a little bit off by the end of it. Pineapple pop-ups, really can't go anywhere without these. I've caught so many big fish on them in the past. There's just always a tub in my bag, be it for a little single choddy or you know, a bright bait over a big bed of boilies. Some Frank Warwick specials, extremely fruity them, just smell so nice, you know. You've got to have a tub of them in there, even if it's just to make my billy smell good. sell dumbbells. Now, dumbbells, because they're just that little bit different shape to a round one, acts a bit differently in the water, and when they're sucking them up, it can just give you an extra little edge. They're also great. I like playing around with them for you know, smaller hook baits. So sort of using half of one of these and half a pop-up. Pop-ups, obviously I'll sell there because that's what I'm using. These ones are bottom baits. Got some cell and some cell opal in there, and they're glugged in honey, would you believe it or not? Little top tip, that little secret one from the Morgan. Don't tell anyone. That's the one. Oh. What I've done is, when I got here, I went round and put out about 5 kilos of bait, but I spread it in a line about 30 yards along that far margin, sort of in about 10 foot going off the tree line, to leave it for the night, which I did manage to do. It's hard, but when the fish are crashing over it. Anyway, so I wanted to prime the area up. Now, these lakes have got big heads of big fish in them, and they'll go for a lot of bait quite quickly. But I think one of the keys to sort of catching quite a few is getting them going. Now, if you can get a few fish grazing around a particular area, that will attract other fish, and the more fish that are in there munching, the more sort of competition for food you create, and as a result, the fish tend to feed a lot more confidently. And you can do that anywhere in your swim. There's always an area that you can sort of keep applying a bit of bait to, or, as I say, just concentrate on one area to put a lot of bait in, and if you can just leave that for a couple of days, then you've got yourself a nice spot that you can put a couple of rods on. You know, it doesn't have to just be one rod. Well, it ain't a bad one. It's not the monster I first thought, but you never can tell. See the old Corda leader there? Going to talk about rigs and lead systems in a bit. I do like those clear ones. You never know exactly what colour lake bed you're fishing on, so if it's clear, then you know it's all right. Whee, get in there. Another chunky mid-20 Cretelakes mirror. Absolutely pristine condition, these fish. You know, you can tell they like their grub. I mean, look at that one. He hasn't got a deep gut, but he's certainly full. And he's quite wide as well as it goes. Chunky little fella. Probably a mid-20. Oh, he looked like he's going to flip then. Anyway, it's nearly dinner time. Before we go to dinner, we're going to go and prime the spots up so they get an hour's break before we come back. And that is a good little tip, that one. Obviously, a lot of these holiday complexes, you do have to go for dinner. So why not make the most of that hour, give them a bit of grub and a little break. Right, let's pop him back and we'll get that done. One funny thing you get over here, like a rat beaver type thing called a koi pew. You see them flying across the old surface all the time. Go around the back banks there and there's trees that have been chewed. They've got all the bark chewed off them when they eat that. They do occasionally swim down and pick up boilies, but they don't seem to be a problem over on this lake. I've just been to other venues in the past where they've actually been an absolute nightmare, either chewing your hairs off or picking your rig up and running into the trees.
As far as rules go, here at Cretelakes there's nothing out of the ordinary. All the obvious things such as particles, death rigs, lead core and braided mainline are not allowed, together with the use of sacks and barbed hooks. But as long as you're sensible, you shouldn't have a problem. Not only is the fishing superb at Cretelakes, the facilities are too. There's plenty of warm showers and washing facilities, and a very popular shop that sells a selection of end tackle and bait if you get stuck, together with drinks and snacks should you want them. Although they feed you with a very hearty breakfast and a massive evening meal, we all get the munchies sometimes, and it's good to know there's supplies on site. Dinner times are always fun on a carping holiday. It's a great time to catch up with the other anglers, to swap stories, and to find out what other people are up to, what's working, what's perhaps not. The majority of guys are happy to share their information. At the end of the day, everyone's on holiday, so it's about doing what you can to help one another. At every venue, dinner fills you right up. Well, it certainly does here. But also take the opportunity to maybe have a quick shower or to visit the shop. At Cretelakes there's also a massive charging area for mobile phones and batteries. You know you're going to be back at the lodge every night at this time, so plan yourself around that. Also use this opportunity to chat to the bailiffs. Once the food's been served, don't be afraid to pick their brains and find out any little nuggets of info that you can take back to your swim. It's a long night ahead, and as in the UK, you want to be back in your swim with your rods sorted and on your spots well before dark. Perhaps get some rigs or bags tied ready, so if you are lucky enough to have one in the night, you can get straight back on the spots with the minimum of disruption.
Well, there we go, had a cracking meal early on, got proper stuffed, came back, got the rods back out, just into darkness, left hand rod wrapped round, and we've got this chunky fella, upper 20, chuffed with that one. From what I've been told, I've been quite unlucky with the sizes out of here so far, so I'm due a lump, so hopefully tonight's the night. The spots are all primed, and we're ready for action. It's a lovely evening, the wind's dropped right off now, which obviously isn't massively conducive for the fishing, but still confident regardless. So I'm going to get this one back, plop that rod back out there, and we'll see if we can have some more. $37. Well, I'm definitely not used to these big ones. I've definitely lost my judgment of size. And there it is. Proper old lump, that one. I think I need to get down to the gym as well. Anyway, that's a right result, getting one off that new spot. As I say, it's always worth having a couple of little areas to trickle a bit of bait into for a few days. Remember, you are here for a full week, so make the most of it. On another note, this actually came on Activate. I was given a couple of kilos of Activate today. Apparently a guy in here, or on this lake, a couple of weeks ago was bagging up on cell, but catching a lot of smaller ones. I gave him some Activate and he had 4 40-pounders, so there we go, first one on the Activate, a nice chunky upper 30. Let's hope there's bigger to come.
French fishery owners normally love the mornings, as anglers often report back catches of big chunks during the night. Catches like this whopping 53-pound mirror, another old original that lives in Lake 2.